Hey Westlight, today I wanted to talk a little bit about a question that I've been getting a lot frequently, um, some from you, some from other people. And the question is this: are we living in the end times? Is this the end of the world? And I think implicit in that question is: are we living through the things that are described in the book of Revelation? And my quick answer to that question is it depends on what you believe is written in the book of Revelation. You see, for many of you, you've been taught that the book of Revelation is a story about the end of the world. Well, as it turns out, the book of Revelation, for the majority of Christian history, I would say maybe for over 4/5 of Christian history, has not been taught as the end of the world. It was a book that described the end of a world. And so let me explain that. Um, the book of Revelation was written to a bunch of Christians, a bunch of churches who were being oppressed. And as you can imagine, these Christians were doing everything they can to make the world better. But there was a world power that made sure that they were oppressed all the time. And so the book of Revelation is talking about the end of that world, the Roman Empire world, the world of world powers oppressing the weaker group of people. And one of the chapters in the book of Revelation that stands out to me is chapters 17 and 18, where Jesus calls this world power, he calls it Babylon. Now, why does he call it Babylon? He calls it Babylon because Babylon in the Old Testament is a group of is basically a world power that comes into Israel and takes the children and takes them back to Babylon. And there they train the kids in the Babylonian ways, and then eventually gives them wives, gives them food and property. So much, they're given so much stuff that eventually at the very end, when somebody from Babylon stands up and says, hey, we need to go back to our home in Israel, a majority of the Israelites said, we don't want to go back home because we're so comfortable here. Somebody set them free, but they decided to stay in prison because they were so comfortable in their prison. So in the book of Revelation, Jesus is basically telling the people that, you know, if you think you're part of the solution that God has for this world, you're wrong. Because you're actually just comfortable being part of the problem of this world. So the book of Revelation is about the end of that comfortable world that's making the world a worse place. And so, yeah, it's not the end of the world, it's the end of that world. But for the people who live in that world, people who are benefiting from these people who are oppressed, for them it feels like it's the end of the world. And maybe that's how we're feeling right now, where the lifestyle that we used to enjoy, we can't enjoy it anymore. And so it feels like the end of the world to you, but it's not the end of the entire world. So for you, if that's you, there's a word of comfort at the end of the book of Revelation by Jesus. And this is what he says. He says, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. Now the sea, the ocean, represents chaos in the Bible, so there's no more chaos in this new world. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. And he who was seated on the throne, that's Jesus, said, I am making everything new. So for those of you who feel like your world is crumbling, Jesus wants to remind you that everything's going to be fine. That there is a person who is sitting on the throne of the world, ensuring that all things are going to be made new. Now, it might hurt to get there. You might lose a lot of things that you held dear to yourself, a lifestyle perhaps that you really enjoyed. But at the end of that long tunnel is a new heaven and new earth where Jesus reigns. I hope this is a word of comfort to you. Have a great week.